What's up guys, it's Malloy Gunter from GunterOutdoors.com. Just wanted to go over for you today how to sight in your compound bow for beginners. So there's two components that you want to identify before you ever pick up your bow and you're ready to sight it in. And that's going to be your draw length and your draw weight. Now I'm going to leave a link in the description below to help you identify those two components, but it's very important that you identify both of those before you ever start. Now, when we're looking at sighting in the bow, you need to look at what type of sight that you do have. So there's a wide variety of different sights out there. There are multi-pin sights, single pin sights. There's sights that operate off of a dot system rather than a pin system. Some are toolless, some require the use of an Allen key, but the main thing to realize is that they're all going to operate in the same manner. Meaning, when you are sighting it in, all you're doing is adjusting the windage, which is your left and right movement, and your elevation, which is your up and down movement. And so once you can understand how the sight moves and how you follow your arrow, that will help you sight in faster. So regardless of what kind of sight you have, as long as you focus on those two key tips, that'll help you sight in faster. And we'll show you that as we shoot arrows at the target. We have a target set up over there. But today we're going to be using a 4-pin Trophy Ridge sight. And this sight, like I said, this is a multi-pin sight. So it's got 4 different pins which are going to indicate 4 different distances. And in order for us to sight this sight in, we're going to have to start at 10 yards is what we're using as our ground floor or our base. That's going to be notated by the top green dot on this sight. So we're going to start by shooting 3 arrows at 10 yards and see where they land. Now if we have to adjust the sight, we're going to move it where the sight needs to go. We're basically following the arrow. So for instance, if the arrow is to the right and down, we're going to move the sight to the right and down. And the way that we'll do that on this sight is just by adjusting that hex nut with an Allen key, and that will adjust our windage. And then with this Allen key, that will adjust our elevation. So we're just going to take a look, shoot a couple arrows, see where they're at, and adjust it accordingly. Alright, so we're ready to take our first shot. We're going to do it from 10 yards. I'm going to take 2 shots, see where the arrow lands, and then I'm going to adjust my sight accordingly. Alright guys, so we took 2 shots from 10 yards, and as you can see, we're just a little bit low and we're a little bit to the right. We're aiming for this top black square right here. So what we're going to want to do is follow our arrows. So we need to move our sight down, probably about 3 to 4 clicks, and we need to move it to the right, probably about the same, 3 to 4 clicks. And that will allow us to get right in that bullseye or that square. Alright, so we're ready to adjust the top pin or the sight housing. So in this scenario, I have a 4-pin sight. Now, you may have additional pins or you may have a single pin sight. This is where you need to decide, do I need to adjust the entire housing or just the single pin? Ideally, you want your pins to be centered in the sight housing. So the more that you adjust your pins up or down, that's going to affect the center of your pins, if that makes sense. So what I want to do is compensate for that when I'm adjusting it. So I'm going to adjust the entire housing in this case because my pins are already centered in the housing. And I'm going to do that by adjusting these hex nuts with an Allen key. Now, if you need to adjust a single pin, you will utilize this dial system, which will affect your up and down or your elevation. In this case, we will not be utilizing it for our 10-yard pin as we adjusted the entire housing. However, we may utilize this dial system when we are sighting in our 20, 30, and 40-yard pins. Alright, so we're going to take 2 shots after our adjustments and see where we're at now. All right, so as you can see, our adjustment really helped. We are centered on the bullseye, so our 10-yard pin is set. We're not gonna move that anymore. We're gonna drop back to 20 yards, and we're gonna take 2 more shots and adjust it accordingly. Alright guys, so we just took 2 shots at 20 yards and it's pretty much right on. I wouldn't say any adjustment is needed. So we're going to go ahead and move back to 30 yards and take 2 shots. Alright, so we are just slightly off. If you can see, we are pretty much centered in terms of our elevation, so we're not going to adjust that. But we are a little bit to the left, so we are going to adjust our windage, the housing windage, to the left. Just 1 click, and that should be good. That'll put a center bullseye. We'll take 2 more shots. Alright guys, so that did the trick. We are centered on at 30 yards. So we have taken care of our 10 yard, our 20 yard, and our 30 yard pins. Just got to move back to 40, take 2 shots, see where we're at. Alright guys, so we just took 2 shots at 40 yards. As you can see, we're a little bit off to the right, but not by much. I mean, it's really less than an inch overall. So I'm happy with that. I know for a fact my 10-yard pin is on, my 20-yard pin is on, 30-yard pin is good to go. 40 yards, just slightly off, but to be honest, most of my shots out in the field are gonna be 30 yards and in, so I'm not gonna adjust my sight housing anymore. I'm gonna call the sight good to go. Alright guys, well there you have it. That's how to sight in a compound bow sight. We got pretty lucky with our 10-yard pin. We only had to make 2 small adjustments, and then we were pretty much right on. Our 20-yard pin was right on. We had to make a small adjustment at 30, and our 40-yard pin was close enough. So depending on your sight, you may have to make more adjustments than that, but remember, they're going to operate, all sights are going to operate off the same concept with your windage left and right and your elevation up and down. So the key things to remember when you are sighting in your bow is you want to maintain proper fundamentals at all times. Maintain your breathing, make sure that your grip is correct. So all of those things are going to play a factor when you are sighting in your bow. If they're off, you could think your sight is off, when in all actuality, it's a fundamental issue. So you got to make sure your fundamentals are strong before you start sighting in your bow. Now I'm going to leave a link on the description below, like I said, to help you identify your draw weight and your draw length, arrow selection. We're also going to have a link for some of the top sights on today's market. Thank you guys for watching.